The boys are rapidly approaching their conclusion, and so far, they're doing it in a very controversial way. Episode 7 featured the death of one character and the origin story of another. It also included 2 unexpected cameos, as well as hidden hints about who might survive the finale. At the same time, the episode received very low ratings, and people are already starting to talk about the entire season being a failure. So, do the boys still have a chance to save the story? Or is this starting to feel like an impossible mission? Let's break it all down in detail over the next few minutes. And we'll start by discussing the references and hidden details that make certain scenes so memorable. Episode 7 opens with a musical performance that religiously glorifies Homelander. He symbolically takes over from Jesus and becomes the new Messiah on Earth. But there's something even more interesting here. Actor Daveed Diggs, who plays the father, has extensive experience in musical theater. He performed the lead role in the Broadway hit Hamilton, which won both Grammy and Pulitzer Awards. If another actor had been cast in the role, there probably wouldn't have been any need for a full musical number. But with Diggs involved, the writers were able to fully utilize his talents. When Butcher delivers his motivational speech about continuing the fight against Homelander, he references one of the Spice Girls, calling her Posh Spice. That was Victoria Adams' nickname early in her career, before she became Victoria Beckham. She eventually married David Beckham and became a global fashion icon. Using her transformation from an average pop singer into one of the world's biggest celebrities, Butcher tries to inspire the team and remind them that the most important thing is to never give up. Unfortunately, the Russian dub completely missed an amazing cameo by a legendary actor. Samuel L. Jackson decided to make a surprise appearance in the Boys franchise near the very end. During the scene where the Deep sits sadly on the pier reflecting on his current situation, a shark swims up to him. They begin arguing, and the entire exchange exists mainly to show that even the underwater world has turned its back on him. But if you watch the scene in the original version, you'll instantly recognize the voice of Hollywood's ultimate motherf. Jackson voices the shark in his signature style, and the moment feels straight out of Pulp Fiction. It's absolutely worth rewatching that scene in English. The second major cameo is the appearance of Negan, or rather, Jeffrey Dean Morgan. As a longtime friend of Eric Kripke since their Supernatural days, Morgan once again appeared as Joe Kessler in a brief scene. And this was probably the final cameo of the series, because the last episode likely won't have enough time for anything extra. The Oval Office scene directly references the comics, even recreating Homelander's pose from the original panels. In the comics, the leader of the Seven takes over the White House and literally tears the president's head off. Butcher later finds him casually sitting behind the desk with a smug grin. The show brings this moment much closer to the source material, as the current president also ends up decapitated, although under very different circumstances. On top of that, Homelander's absurd new laws and restrictions clearly parody modern political issues in the United States. For example, he proposes sending troops into sanctuary cities that are hiding starlighters. In reality, sanctuary cities do exist, though they protect undocumented immigrants rather than political enemies. Immigration remains one of the most debated topics under the current administration, along with the president's policies overall. That's exactly why The Boys constantly references America's political climate. There's also an interesting detail hidden in the rehearsal scene watched by MM and Starlight. The fictional hero Hawk Archer threatens the in-universe version of Starlight, accusing her of planning to replace a spacious ranch with shopping malls. This mirrors the exact same type of storyline and setting seen in Yellowstone, the television phenomenon that exploded in popularity and eventually spawned 5 spin-offs. The Doppler system Frenchie uses to detect Homelander's approach is based on a real scientific method for measuring signals. It works by using sound waves to track moving objects. Interestingly, this principle is most commonly used in medicine, especially in ultrasound machines. Once again, it highlights just how much of a genius Frenchie really was. His death was undeniably tragic, but it also hinted at Kimiko's fate. In storytelling, there's a narrative principle known as Chekhov's gun. In simple terms, if a gun is hanging on the wall in the first act, it must eventually be fired by the end of the story. This technique is widely used in films and television, although in long-running series, some plot points can get lost due to rewrites or reshoots. However, we're now talking about the final episodes, meaning every detail shown on screen should matter. Shortly before his death, Frenchie confessed his love to Kimiko and agreed to the idea of building a family together in a quiet countryside home. Most importantly, he showed her a photo of a shelter dog, and the directors deliberately focused the camera on it. They could have explained everything through dialogue, but instead they chose to visually emphasize the moment. The dog even has a small wheelchair. For viewers, this strongly suggests that Kimiko will survive the finale and eventually adopt the same dog in Frenchie's memory. Naturally, this completely differs from her storyline in the comics, but at this point we've already noted many times that the show only really shares character names with the source material. Another major departure from the comics is the origin of MM's nickname. In the new episode, he finally explains where Mother's Milk comes from. The series avoided addressing this topic for years, which confused many viewers. It now turns out that the nickname is connected to him caring for an injured bird rather than needing his mother's milk to survive like in the comics. Episode 7 also finally introduces characters from Gen V, although in a heavily reduced capacity. Besides Marie and Jordan, who actively participate in the story, Kate also appears, or at least her image does. Her photo hangs on a wall displaying the strongest telepaths Homelander uses to identify true believers. But will she appear in the finale itself? Probably not. There's simply too little time left. References and Easter eggs are great, but now it's time to discuss the biggest issue. What exactly is happening with the story? Right now, it feels like the plot barely moves forward and constantly goes in circles. Soldier Boy hates Homelander, then helps him, then hates him again, and suddenly plans to leave for Bogota. Marie is portrayed as an all-powerful blood manipulator in the spin-off, yet now she struggles to control her powers again. Butcher tears apart random soups with his tentacles but never seriously tries using them against Homelander. Soldier Boy gets casually choked out here, even though he was an unstoppable force during Season 3. Overall, the story stumbles in almost every episode, while actual progression only happens in tiny pieces, usually during the final few minutes of each episode. The most concerning part is that fans are genuinely worried about the quality of the finale. Next week's episode will supposedly conclude the conflict between the boys and Homelander. Yet episode 7 received the lowest ratings of the entire 5th season, and viewers are criticizing the writers for almost everything. That's a dangerous sign. We've seen many beloved shows completely collapse near the finish line. Adding fuel to the fire, Anthony Starr recently started liking social media posts that either mock the show or express concern that the finale won't be satisfying. Previously, the actor joked that Stranger Things completely failed its ending, while the boys would supposedly do it right. But judging by recent events, something clearly went wrong, because even Starr himself now seems uncertain that the series will end on a high note. The upcoming Soldier Boy spin-off only complicates things further. The show is set to premiere next year and has already been announced as a multi-season project, which means Eric Kripke has major plans for it. In Season 5, Jensen Ackles' character and backstory play a crucial role in the narrative, and the showrunner almost seems to be building bridges directly toward the prequel series. Now it turns out Soldier Boy has been frozen again, and there's probably not enough time left to unfreeze him before the finale. If the spin-off succeeds, it could eventually evolve into a full sequel series, especially since the central character is still alive. No matter how you look at it, there are problems everywhere. But can the boys still be saved? Is it possible for the final episode to deliver a satisfying ending and answer most of the lingering questions? We think there's still a chance, but only if the ending isn't positive. Homelander should survive, eliminate all opposition, and establish a permanent regime under his control. Naturally, that would create a dystopian dictatorship with obvious parallels to Nazism, but also to Julius Caesar, whom Homelander repeatedly references throughout the series. That kind of ending would be divisive. People would continue debating it for years. It would feel controversial, uncomfortable, and unforgettable, because right now, a happy ending seems completely impossible. The boys are cornered, and they have no guaranteed way to defeat Homelander. If they somehow manage to beat him within a single episode, the finale will almost certainly be labeled predictable and mediocre. And honestly, based on everything happening right now, that's exactly where the story seems to be heading. The Supes barely use their powers anymore. Ryan still can't recover emotionally, while Kimiko is apparently about to receive even more insane abilities, and once again, returning to the Caesar parallels. He was ultimately betrayed and killed by the people closest to him. Homelander has behaved so monstrously that now virtually everyone around him has turned against him. From a storytelling perspective, his defeat feels like the most logical outcome. Still, let's not jump too far ahead. Share your predictions for the finale in the comments, because this discussion is more relevant than ever with less than a week remaining before the final episode airs. One final warning. The finale officially releases on May 20th, but some theaters will screen it early on May 19th. So be very careful online during those days, because spoilers will absolutely be everywhere and could ruin the experience. That's all for today. See you very soon in the next videos.